two officers spotted a black man behind the wheel of a county-issued SUV. Instead of checking the license plates or following proper procedure, they acted on their assumptions. Within moments, a traffic stop that should never have occurred became fraught with tension, loud voices, and was entirely unnecessary. And the worst part was, they had no idea the man they were yelling at wasn't a suspect at all, but a sheriff's deputy with more authority than both of them combined. Before we go any further, tell us where in the world you're watching from in the comments, and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you absolutely don't want to miss. Sheriff's Deputy Marcus Rivers, 38 years old, had been serving Fulton County for nearly 15 years. Known within his department for maintaining composure in situations where other deputies lost their patience, Marcus had cultivated a reputation as the officer people called when a situation demanded a steady hand. On this particular day, he wasn't responding to any emergency call. He was simply en route back to the county courthouse after completing some paperwork at a local substation, cruising along in a black, county-issued Chevy Tahoe. Marcus drove with one hand resting lightly on the steering wheel, the afternoon sun glinting off the badge clipped to his duty belt. His radio hummed softly in the background as he changed lanes, his thoughts occupied by nothing more pressing than whether he'd have enough time to grab lunch before his next appointment. The road was tranquil until a white Ford Crown Victoria slid out from the median and positioned itself uncomfortably close to his rear bumper. Marcus glanced in his rearview mirror. The patrol unit remained inordinately near. He could discern two officers inside, neither of whom he recognized. The driver, Officer Daniel Whitford, leaned forward, his gaze narrowed, while his partner, Officer Kyle Brenner, gestured at something within their dashboard. Marcus had witnessed those kinds of looks before, the kind officers gave when their minds had already reached a conclusion before their training had a chance to intervene. Moments later, red and blue lights flashed erratically behind him. Marcus let out a sigh, maintaining his composure, and gently guided the SUV to the shoulder, shifting into park. Even before his door had fully closed, Whitford and Brenner were already exiting their vehicle, their hands hovering too close to their holsters, the tension far too high for an unexplained traffic stop. Whitford barked, "Driver, keep your hands where we can see them." Marcus raised both hands, palms open, resting them on the steering wheel. "Officer, is there a reason for this stop?" His voice remained calm, steady, and automatic. But Whitford offered no reply. Instead, he approached the SUV as if confronting a threat, not a fellow officer. Brenner moved around to the passenger side, surveying the interior as if seeking something to corroborate his existing beliefs. Whitford reached the window. He didn't request license and registration. He didn't introduce himself. He didn't provide any justification for the stop. No, he simply stared. "Is this your vehicle?" Whitford inquired, his voice sharp and suspicious. "It's assigned to me," Marcus replied. "I'm on duty, heading back to the courthouse." Whitford's eyebrows drew together. "Oh, really? You work for the county? Doing what exactly?" Marcus didn't shift his position. "Sheriff's deputy." From the other side of the SUV, Brenner let out a low, skeptical chuckle. "Sure you are," he muttered. "A badge in the wrong hands doesn't carry much weight." Marcus continued to breathe evenly. He had encountered officers like this before, officers whose assumptions overshadowed their professionalism. But what surprised him was how swiftly they escalated the situation without even checking the vehicle's plates, which clearly bore government markings. "Officer Whitford," Marcus said calmly, "my identification is on my belt." Whitford raised his hand sharply. "Don't move. Not yet." Brenner moved closer, now peering through the rear window. "He's got equipment back here," he stated. "Big bag, tactical case, radio charger. Something feels off." Marcus maintained a level tone. "That's my issued gear." Whitford's jaw tightened. "We'll see." Something in the atmosphere shifted. Then came one of those subtle changes that signaled to Marcus the situation had moved beyond unprofessionalism. It was rapidly turning dangerous. Whitford's hand hovered near his holster. Brenner's eyes darted around the interior as if searching for something that wasn't there. Neither officer appeared to be listening to what Marcus was actually saying. They were reacting to their preconceived notions of who he was. Whitford stepped back slightly, as if preparing to assert control in the most detrimental manner. "All right," he said. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to step out of the vehicle nice and slow. We'll sort the rest out afterward." Marcus remained still. "Not yet," he said, meeting Whitford's gaze through the window. "Before I touch anything, I need to inform you of something important." Marcus held Whitford's stare through the glass, his voice steady and controlled, yet carrying enough weight to make any professional pause. "Before I touch anything," he reiterated, "you need to know that everything happening right now is being recorded by 3 cameras, your body cams, my dash cam, and the courthouse system I'm reporting to." These words did not placate Whitford. They rattled him. He stepped back from the window as if taken aback by Marcus's assertiveness, as if authority emanating from Marcus felt like a challenge rather than a statement of fact. Brenner also shifted, glancing toward the dash cam on Marcus's windshield as if he had forgotten that police vehicles recorded automatically. But Whitford forced his voice back into a tone of command. "Step out of the vehicle," he repeated, louder this time. Now, Marcus slowly opened the door, not quickly or dramatically, but just enough to indicate he was not resisting. The sunlight first illuminated his uniform, his badge glinting clearly on his belt as he stepped onto the shoulder. But instead of acknowledgement or even a hint of embarrassment, Brenner muttered under his breath, "Could have gotten that online." Whitford moved immediately behind Marcus, his tone clipped. "Hands behind your back." "For what reason?" Marcus inquired. His tone was not aggressive, merely factual. He was giving them an opportunity to correct their course, to adhere to protocol, to reconsider. But they did not. Whitford grabbed Marcus's wrist with the unrefined haste of a rookie officer, quick, rough, and impulsive. Marcus did not pull away, twist, or react. He had restrained dozens of suspects in his career and understood something those 2 officers did not. Panic is contagious, while calm is power. "I'm not resisting," Marcus stated, letting his arms naturally lower behind him. "But you still haven't told me the reason for the stop." Brenner bypassed protocol entirely, moving directly toward the rear door of the SUV. "Hey," Marcus said, turning slightly. "You do not have consent to search." Brenner ignored him and yanked the door open. Marcus felt a tightening in his chest, not from fear, but from frustration. He had worked too hard, served too long, and built too much credibility to be treated as someone who didn't belong in his own uniform. Whitford gave him a slight shove, not enough to cause him to fall, but enough to underscore that this wasn't about procedure, it was about control. Inside the SUV, Brenner began rummaging immediately through the radio bag, the cuff pouch, the trauma kit. Items clattered loudly, each sound more careless than the last. Marcus kept his voice even. "That's an illegal search. You know that." Whitford clicked his tongue. "We'll decide what's legal." A car slowed on the highway, its driver staring wide-eyed as it passed. A moment later, another car slowed. Then another. People didn't know what was happening, but they recognized the appearance of it. Brenner moved to the passenger seat, tossing Marcus's paperwork aside, pushing aside the notebook he used for daily call logs. "Marcus, you've got a lot of equipment," Brenner commented. "A bit much for a courthouse dropout." Marcus exhaled, struggling to remain composed. "I'm not repeating myself. I'm a sheriff's deputy. My badge is right there on my belt." Whitford didn't look at it. He didn't want to. He preferred the narrative he had already constructed in his mind. Then he made the mistake that finally drew attention. He pressed Marcus harder against the SUV. Just as another vehicle pulled over onto the shoulder, a woman stepped out, her phone already recording. "Are you okay?" she called out cautiously. Whitford snapped his head toward her. "Ma'am, step back." She didn't. More cars began slowing down behind her, their drivers watching, recording, confused as to why a man in uniform was being treated like a suspect. Brenner popped open the rear case where Marcus kept his tactical vest. He froze. Inside was a full county-issued vest with Sheriff printed in bold letters across the front. Whitford noticed his partner's sudden stillness. "What is it?" Brenner didn't answer immediately, but his expression subtly shifted. Marcus sensed the tension change, not dissipate, but transform. Whitford moved toward the rear door, peering inside. His eyes fell on the vest, then the patch, then the serial number. For a fleeting moment, his confidence wavered. "This doesn't make sense," Whitford muttered. "It makes perfect sense," Marcus replied. "If you had run the plates, you would have known exactly who the vehicle belongs to." Brenner swallowed hard. "Danny, his name's on the vest." Whitford shot him a glare, as if Brenner had spoken out of turn. Marcus lifted his chin, not with smugness or anger, but with weariness. "Now you see why I kept my hands visible." Whitford remained silent. His posture shifted, but his pride did not yield. He turned back toward Marcus, attempting to regain his composure. "Where's your badge ID?" "On my belt," Marcus reminded him. "Where it's supposed to be?" Whitford finally looked, really looked. His jaw tightened. His eyes flickered between the badge, the ID, and the gear inside the SUV. Everything matched. Everything was legitimate. Everything they had assumed was incorrect. Brenner quietly closed the rear door, his earlier haste replaced by a new reticence. The woman recording from the roadside called out again, "Is he a cop? Why are you treating him like that?" Whitford did not respond to her. He couldn't, because Brenner had just discovered something else. A folder containing Marcus's case assignments, each stamped with the sheriff's office seal. "Danny," Brenner whispered, his voice cracking, "we messed up." Whitford's face drained of color. Then finally, he said, the words Marcus had been anticipating since the stop began. "Chief, you better come look at this." Chief Inspector Ronald Keaton was not the type of man to hurry. After 28 years in uniform, he walked with the measured pace of someone who had witnessed every conceivable mistake officers could make. Yet even he was not entirely prepared for what he encountered on the side of Highway 92 that afternoon. When Keaton emerged from his cruiser, he expected a traffic stop. He expected a suspect. He did not anticipate seeing a fully uniformed sheriff's deputy pressed against an SUV, while two visibly nervous officers avoided eye contact like guilty rookies. He closed his door deliberately, surveying the scene. The open gear bag, the vest partially pulled from its case, the bystanders recording from the shoulder, and Marcus standing tall, despite Whitford's grip still lingering on his arm. Keaton approached with the calm authority of a man who knew that true command did not require shouting. "All right," he stated, his voice firm but even. "Someone tell me exactly what is happening here." Whitford straightened his posture, attempting to reassert control. "Sir, we pulled him over for suspicious driving. The vehicle didn't look—" Keaton raised one hand, a single gesture, and Whitford fell silent, as if his voice had been disconnected. Keaton then turned his attention to Marcus, not with suspicion, but with the slow, appraising gaze he reserved for identifying competence in a room. "Deputy Rivers," Keaton said, "are you all right?" Marcus nodded once. "Yes, sir." Whitford blinked. The words struck him hard. Deputy Rivers. He hadn't believed Marcus when he stated it earlier, and hearing Keaton say it aloud shattered the last vestige of his denial. Keaton stepped closer. "Why is your equipment all over the ground, Deputy?" Marcus didn't answer. He didn't need to. He simply gestured toward Brenner, who swallowed and stared at his boots. Keaton turned his gaze to the two officers. "Did either of you run the plates on this vehicle?" Silence, the kind that conveyed the truth before either man could utter a word. Keaton's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Did either of you verify his identification before touching him?" More silence. A passing car honked. Its driver's phone was pointed toward the scene, another stark reminder that this was not merely a poor traffic stop, it was rapidly becoming a public relations disaster. Keaton exhaled heavily and looked at Marcus again. "Deputy, I'll take it from here. Thank you for remaining calm." Marcus gave a slight nod. "Yes, sir. But they already searched my vehicle without consent." Keaton turned his head sharply toward Whitford. "You two conducted a search?" Whitford attempted to speak. "Sir, we believed—" "You believed what?" Keaton interrupted, his tone not rising, but his disappointment carrying more weight than any shout ever could. That a black man driving a county-issued SUV must be a criminal, that his uniform was stolen, that his badge was fake. Is that what you're about to tell me?" Whitford's mouth opened, but no words emerged. Brenner spoke instead, his voice low and cracking. "We made assumptions, sir." Keaton's eyes narrowed. "You certainly did." He reached into the SUV and picked up Marcus's vest himself, reading the bold sheriff patch, running his thumb across the serial number. His expression hardened. "This alone should have terminated the entire encounter," he stated, "but instead you escalated." A woman on the shoulder called out, still recording. He told them he was an officer. They ignored him. Keaton didn't respond to her directly, but he heard her. He heard everything. He turned back to Marcus. "Deputy Rivers, would you like to give your account before I proceed?" "Yes, sir," Marcus replied. He remained professional, but every word landed with precision. "They initiated the stop without stating a reason. I kept my hands visible. They refused to check my identification, and when I told them where it was, they prevented me from reaching for it. They pulled me out without cause and began searching the vehicle the moment I stepped out." Keaton nodded slowly, absorbing each statement. Then he looked at Whitford. His voice remained calm, too calm. "Is any part of what Deputy Rivers just said untrue?" Whitford shook his head once. "No, sir." "And you, Officer Brenner?" Brenner's voice was barely audible. "No, sir." Keaton took one step closer to them, lowering his voice so only the two officers could hear, though Marcus could still catch every word. "Do you understand what you've just done?" he asked. "You illegally detained a deputy. You performed an unlawful search. You escalated a situation you created, and you did it all while your body cams were rolling and civilians were recording." Whitford's eyes dropped. Brenner's hands trembled at his sides. Keaton straightened back up, addressing everyone now. "Deputy Rivers," he said, "you are no longer being detained. You're free to stand down." Marcus stepped away from the SUV, rolling his shoulders as the tension finally eased from him for the first time since the stop began. But Keaton wasn't finished. He faced Whitford and Brenner fully. "Officer Whitford, Officer Brenner, turn around." Both men froze. Keaton's voice remained unchanged. Slowly they turned, the realization settling over them like a cold rain. Marcus watched, not with satisfaction, not with a desire for revenge, but with the quiet, steady calm of someone who had endured far too much and finally saw truth catching up. Keaton reached for his radio. "Dispatch, this is Chief Keaton. I need internal affairs at my location immediately. We have a serious misconduct situation." Whitford's shoulders slumped. Brenner closed his eyes. Keaton didn't stop there. "To avoid any interference with the investigation," he stated, "both of you are being detained pending IIA review." Then he looked at Marcus, truly looked at him. "If you choose to file a formal complaint," Keaton said, "everything you need is already on record." Marcus nodded slowly. "I intend to." Keaton issued one final command, the one that concluded this segment with the exact power shift the viewers had anticipated. "Turn around, both of you. Hands behind your back." Chief Keaton didn't rush the handcuffing. He didn't raise his voice. He simply acted with the calm precision of someone who understood the gravity of his actions, and that made the moment resonate even more powerfully. Whitford's hands were secured behind his back first. The metallic click cut through the quiet highway air like a small explosion. Brenner swallowed hard, allowing the same cold cuffs to close around his wrists. The bystanders recording fell silent. Everyone understood this was not ordinary. Police officers being cuffed by their own chief was a clear indication that something profoundly serious had just occurred. Keaton stepped back, observing the two officers as if seeing them clearly for the first time. "Internal Affairs will question you separately," he stated, his voice steady. "But let me make one thing clear. What you did today is the kind of misconduct that erodes public trust." Whitford's jaw trembled. "Sir, we didn't mean—" Keaton cut him off with a single look. "Intention does not erase impact." Marcus stood near the SUV, arms crossed, not defiantly, but with a steady posture, like someone who finally felt solid ground beneath his feet after hours of teetering on edge. Keaton turned toward Marcus. "Deputy Rivers, you will need to provide a full statement once IIA arrives. I want everything documented, every word they said, every action they took, every warning they ignored." "I'll be thorough," Marcus replied. "You always are," Keaton acknowledged. A second cruiser arrived, then a third. The IIA van pulled up moments later, two investigators stepping out with clipboards, their body cams already activated. Their presence brought a different kind of silence, the kind officers experience when accountability becomes palpable. Investigator Laura Collins, sharp-eyed and direct, approached first. "What do we have?" Keaton gestured toward the SUV. "Illegal stop, illegal detainment, illegal search." Deputy Rivers identified himself early in the encounter, but they ignored him. "The entire event is captured on multiple cameras." Collins nodded once and then turned to Marcus. "Deputy, are you okay to walk us through your side?" Marcus gave a short nod. "Yes, ma'am." She motioned for him to step aside with her. The second investigator, Michael Grant, approached the two cuffed officers. "Officers," he said coldly, "we will need to hear your statements separately. And just to be clear, lying about any detail will only make this worse." Whitford closed his eyes. Brenner stared at the ground as if it might swallow him whole. Grant didn't move. "Which one of you initiated the stop?" Whitford lifted his head slightly. "I did." "And your reason?" Whitford hesitated. That hesitation was sufficient. "We, believe the driver didn't match the vehicle." "So you profiled him?" Grant stated, his tone unwavering. He didn't need to raise his voice. "That alone is a violation of department policy. What happened next?" "We asked him to step out." Grant tilted his head. "Asked?" Whitford swallowed. "Ordered." "And did he resist?" "No." Grant nodded slowly. "Yet you escalated and searched the vehicle without consent." Whitford's voice dropped to a whisper. "Yes." On the other side of the scene, Collins finished speaking with Marcus. Her face tightened, and she marched directly toward Keaton. "Chief, we're opening a formal misconduct case. Following the account provided by Deputy Rivers and corroborated by the dash camera footage, we are formally proposing an immediate disciplinary suspension for both officers involved, pending a comprehensive inquiry." Keaton received this news without a flicker of surprise, appearing to have anticipated such an outcome. Collins then elaborated, emphasizing the gravity of the situation. "This is not a minor incident," he stated. "This pertains to civil rights, specifically a sheriff's deputy being subjected to racial profiling and unlawful detainment. If this information were to become public knowledge, the repercussions would be immense." Keaton, however, let out a long sigh. "It is already public," he commented, his gaze drifting towards the assembled group of civilians, many of whom were still engaged in recording the proceedings. Whitford finally yielded, approaching. "Sir, please," he implored. "We offer our sincerest apologies. We were unaware." Marcus, who had remained silent since the handcuffs were applied, stepped forward. "You did not need to know my identity to extend basic courtesy," he said in a measured tone. "Your commitment to professionalism should stem from your sworn duty, not from the badge you wear." Whitford's jaw tightened, his mouth opening and closing without a sound. He recognized the futility of any words he might utter, knowing they would ring hollow. Collins then addressed Marcus directly. "Deputy Rivers, Internal Affairs strongly recommends that you file a civil complaint. You are entirely within your rights to do so." Marcus gave a single decisive nod. "I intend to," he confirmed. Breener visibly recoiled. That simple declaration struck him more profoundly than the restraint of the handcuffs. As the Internal Affairs officers escorted Whitford and Brenner towards the waiting transport van, one of the onlookers shouted, "They picked the wrong man to arrest today." Another voice chimed in, "This is precisely why people lack faith in law enforcement." Keaton turned to address the crowd. "Everyone, please step back. Internal Affairs is now securing the scene." Marcus observed the officers being led into the Internal Affairs van, the identical vehicle used for those accused of wrongdoing. The scene felt profoundly disorienting. He had witnessed countless individuals arrested and placed into those vans, but seeing officers confined within was an entirely different experience, necessary yet jarring. As the van doors were about to close, Brenner looked up, his gaze meeting Marcus's for the first time without animosity. "I am truly sorry," he whispered, his voice trembling. Marcus acknowledged him with a slow nod, not in forgiveness, nor in forgetting, but in simple recognition. "Strive to do better," he advised. "If you continue in this profession, commit to improvement." The van doors sealed with a definitive thud. Caton rejoined Marcus, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You handled this with a level of restraint most officers could only aspire to. I am proud of you." "I was merely fulfilling my duties," Marcus responded. "You did more than that," Caton countered. "You prevented this situation from escalating into something far more severe." As the patrol cars departed and normal traffic flow resumed, Marcus returned to his own vehicle, settling into the driver's seat. The interior once again felt like his own space, not a scene of conflict nor a point of contention, but his professional environment, his sphere of responsibility, his personal territory. He placed both hands firmly on the steering wheel, inhaled deeply, and at last resumed his journey. Because even after an ordeal like this, the work perseveres. The commitment to service does not cease, and neither does he. If you believe this situation was mishandled, please share your perspective and stay tuned for what unfolds next.